Good evening. Hearty welcome to everyone. So delighted to have you all here and wish us all a wonderful conversation with Mr. Arun Maira. So very hearty welcome to Arun. He is our main speaker today, the person who will be sharing with us and having a conversation with us. And I think he doesn't really need an introduction, but still, I would just like to briefly not only welcome Arun, but tell you a bit more about him. So Arun Maira was born in Lahore on the 15th of August, 1943, and he's a management consultant and a former member of the Planning Commission of India. We both were part of the Tata Administrative Service, and I've known him for over 25 years now. And he's worked in many corporates, many organizations, like, of course, besides Tata Motors, Arthur D. Little, Boston Consulting Group, where he was the chairman for quite some time. He joined the Planning Commission in 2000 and served on the Planning Commission for about 5 years till 2014. Actually, for 5 years, he was part of that. Arun has been a thought leader, contributing to policy changes and changes of all kinds in areas like the Confederation of Indian Industry, where Ganesh would probably have met him, the World Economic Forum, the Planning Commission, and he's also been on organizations like Save the Children India, the India Brand Equity Foundation, the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, and the UN Global Compact and WWF India. Having known Arun for many years, I can say he's not only a thought leader, not only a person who is wonderful in systems thinking, but also a deeply compassionate person at heart. And I was absolutely delighted to learn that he also is very fond of poetry. In fact, he's written a book on poetry, which I'll share more about. But just before I go to that, I would like to say once again, Arun, absolutely delighted to have you with us, and a hearty welcome to all our listeners on Zoom and on Facebook Live for this conversation today. So a little more about the books that Arun has written. He's written Listening to My Mind, which is Zen-like Diversions. Of course, he's written many books. I'm just giving you a feel of only some of them. He has also written a book called Transforming Systems, and a person who's very, very passionate about taking a systemic view of things, seeing things in totality. He has also written this beautiful book. And the one we are going to discuss today, friends, the ideas from the book, which is A Billion Fireflies. Before I hand it over to Arun, I just want to share a bit about the context of this conscious conversations. As part of our movement for one wholesome world, a world that works for all, we have instituted a series of critical conversations, conscious conversations, where we get thought leaders come together to think about crucial issues that make for a world that works for all. Along with One Wholesome World is the Foundation for Peace and Compassionate Leadership, which is opening a World Unity Center in Srinagar, Kashmir. In fact, that's where I'm speaking from. And so this is really in the same line, then we are going to have this conversation. So let me welcome you again, Arun, and invite you to share with us all, why is it that you wrote this book? What exactly compelled you to write this book?
Thank you so much, Arun. It is a joy for me to be in conversation with you. It always is. And this is a very special conversation because you have asked me to share the ideas in a book which I put together, which is a reflection on what we have been through, firstly in the last 1 year as humanity together, and then using that as a reflection on how humanity is progressing or not progressing, and what we could together do to change the course of progress of humanity as a whole. So what made me write this book was starting, as I said, about a year ago, when we first were struck by this pandemic, something which knocked the whole world over, something so mysterious, spreading in ways that we didn't understand. It frightened us completely and forced us to lock ourselves in. In fact, our Honorable Prime Minister did say a year ago that all Indians, responsible people, should lock themselves in and stay away from other people, keep a social distance from other people. That would be the only way to save ourselves, to save our country and humanity, to cut yourself off from other people. But that was physically necessary for the sake of prevention of the infection of the bodies. And what did we suddenly find? We firstly found inside ourselves fear, concern, and resentment almost against something on the outside which was forcing us to get into these holes. And then soon, though, in our country, in India, we began to see things on the outside which we had never seen before, which was people in millions leaving the places in which they were supposed to lock themselves in and moving around. And many of them were moving because they didn't have a place to stay so locked in as they were commanded to by the Prime Minister. So where would they be keeping themselves safe? And many who were able to lock themselves in were locked in such small congested places within which they could not keep the distance from each other, and nor could they, in those places, within those places or nearby to those places, get water to drink and sources of food to buy and eat. And so began to realize that we weren't noticing the conditions of people who were living right beside us. They had been for many, many years. During our whole lives, perhaps, such people had lived in those conditions around us, and we hadn't noticed it. It's only when this pandemic struck that it shook us up, both inside ourselves, as well as shook us up, the world around us, and made us notice the world around us. And many of us then, and Arun, you were part of that, we former retired persons from the Tata Administrative Services with compassion for the world around us, as we were brought up to think when we were in business leadership positions in Tata's, that you don't exist for yourself and your business doesn't exist to produce returns for itself. It exists to make life better for the people around and for the country and for the world. So we did get together, if you recollect, Arun, and we had these public conversations which you organized, and thank you for that again, called TS for Change, and in which what did we discuss? We talked about what could we do. And we were in the positions that we were in our organizations. We had positions, some resources, some opportunities to make an impact. And here we were now, like retired, without command of organizations. And yet the compassion in us said we must do something. So what is it that we can do and should do? And many such conversations happened in many groups I found, and I noticed Ganesh, my friend Ganesh Natarajan, and you mentioned him already. He was leading a group called Strategic Vision Partners, people from many cities in India who in similar positions, means they have done well in life, had, like himself, had wealth for themselves and knowledge, and said, but what can we do to make life better for people around our cities and around in the country too? So he too organized such conversations amongst people who wanted to make a difference. And many ideas came up in several such conversations about what is desirable to do and what is possible for everyone to do in their own ways. Everyone could do. I went on through this for the whole year, as you did. And until this last pandemic struck again a few weeks ago, Pune, Bombay, Delhi, Gurgaon, and now spreading. Until that time, if you recollect, into February, we were thinking that it's all over. It's time to sort of rebuild the economy and make the connections all over again. And what were people talking about? They were repeating the same thing that we used to talk about last February before the pandemic struck, which was about the size of the economy, the growth rates of the economy, and so we've lost a few quarters. When are we going to catch up? When are we going to make up the growth rate of the economy, the GDP, to make it a $5 trillion economy? This became the conversation amongst business people and policymakers, the same old conversation. Where was the change in this conversation and the consideration of that path that we were on then had, either due to ignorance or even because it had unintended consequences, created the conditions in which many millions of our brethren could not live decently, couldn't have access to jobs, couldn't have access to clean water, and shelter, and the things that all human beings must have. So how are we going back to forgetting what we said we would change? People used to keep saying, as you remember, Arun, in our conversations, that no, we don't want to talk about, and Ganesh would remember this even more, it's not about returning to normalcy. It is about creating something new, something more resilient, something more sustainable. And so these ideas were there. We had talked about them in those days when we were locked in. But as soon as we got the opportunity to start going out physically, we seem to have gone out in our minds and forgotten the thoughts and ideas and the caring that had arisen in us as we were locked in. So I felt it necessary to just record for our own sakes what we had promised to ourselves that we would do, and when, and we hoped it would be soon, get out and start acting and doing different things to make the world very different. So that's how I very
Yes.
asked some friends that, I want to have a book out in a few days before we start jumping out. I didn't realize that, of course, we'd be locked in again as we are. But of course, normal publishers will tell you that it takes, several months after the author's written a book to get it out. But then fortunately, there have been a lot of people inventing new business models and using technology. And someone said, look, I've got this new way which he's been working for a while. I can get your book out in 1 week's time.
Wow.
Just to test, I've got this book on poems, which poems I've written over many years, over 30, 40 years. And no one wants to publish a book on poems because the big time publishers say, who reads poems? Most people don't read poems. So he won't do it. So I asked him just as a test, would you do me a favor? Would you first publish my book of poems and we'll follow it up with this book about changing the world?
Beautiful.
So and that's for those two books that you
Lovely.
about.
Lovely. Thanks, Arun. And you must tell me who this publisher is because I'd love to get some books out through him. But yeah, I'll follow up on that. So let me just also share with everyone, why is it that we invited Arun Maira sir to be on this conversation? I think given the context that he just mentioned, I think one of the things I've been noticing for many years is that all the resources, the knowledge, the money, the know-how, the IT, every single piece that we need to create a world that works for all is available with us. We have the IT resources, we have people, we have passionate people, lovely examples of people doing great work, but they are all like pieces of jigsaw puzzle which are not really woven together. And this thought has been bothering me for a long time, that if all the good things that are happening in the nation could be woven together in some way where people connect, they have critical conversations, creative conversations, and they co-create solutions at a local level, I think the nation would be very different. Not only the nation, India, I believe, has the capacity to show the world how this works. And that's why I've been a great fan of Arun for many years. Let me just give you one example of what I'm talking about, of these jigsaw puzzle pieces. There is a person close to Maheshwar in Madhya Pradesh who is doing 5-level farming. His name is Patanjali Jha. In 1 acre, he farms at 5 levels. There is another Jugnu or firefly called Akash Chaurasia, who in Sagar, Madhya Pradesh is doing exactly the same thing. There's another Jugnu called Mayank Gandhi, who is doing great work on converting farms into fruit farms and making the income of farmers go up 10 times. And there's another Jugnu with us today, my classmate from IIT Delhi, Rohtash Mal, who's doing an amazing amount of work in how farmers can get the equipment they need and so on. And he has a network of 300 farm centers all over India. Now, the question is, if these four Jugnus and the many other Jugnus in India who are linked to farming could come together and start thinking of a vision of what could be possible, I think magic will happen. And it's not just a thought, it's actually going to happen. So this is what inspired me. And these Jugnus are, in my view, and it might be a little different from what Arun has in mind, a Jugnu, and Ganesh knows, is a catalyst who can catalyze inspiration, initiative, integration, and innovation through critical conversations. So that's why I'm a fan of Arun, been a fan for Arun for many years, and that's why I was delighted to invite him. Now, Arun, tell us a bit more about the, when you look at systems and models of change, I think there are four scenarios of models of power that you have been sharing. So I'm going to fire up your slides.
Don't do that.
Okay, sure. You tell me. Yeah.
Let me connect with what you have said.
Right.
You've given the story.
Yes.
What the idea is.
Yes.
So let me build on that.
Sure. Please.
Let me build on that. Connecting with what we were discussing before, that there is concern that things are not going the way they should be going. And I think because we got a second shock this time, and we thought that we'd taken care of it. The first, some great, and India being celebrated or celebrating itself that, we were one country which had got it right. We had lessons to give the world, and, this is how you do it. Just a few weeks ago,
yes.
But with confidence.
Yes.
So I think many of us believed it is so, that we have licked it. And then this mysterious thing comes back. And now we are even more frightened because we don't know how to handle something like this.
Yes.
And our concern now is double. First, there was a concern about the people out there, the poor migrants and stuff like that. And this time in the second round, it's people like us who've been so infected and bothered in Bombay, in Pune, in Delhi, in Gurgaon, that this thing even strikes us. We can't shut it out of our walls. We were living previously in cocoons. We were in our establishments and we kept these people who we thought brought the virus from their slums and their dirty conditions to us. And now we realize it seems to be coming to us and we are infecting them in turn. Backwards, it's going back. So we are completely confounded, many people. And the point is this, if I don't feel confounded, then I'm not going to learn a different way that is now required to solve this big problem. If I keep going with the certainty that I knew it all along and someone else is not doing the right things, I have masses of uneducated people or people that I disagree with, those are people not doing the right things. I know we are not going to have the change that we need to have. So the arising of a firefly, as you mentioned, it really starts with what you teach yourself. It's a consciousness of your insignificance, a consciousness of your insignificance. And let's go to the four models of power exercise. But how did we start with those models? In 2000, the year 2000, when I returned to India from the United States of America, many Indians, I'm talking of the year 2000, when India was shining, its GDP was growing, were concerned, however, that the people in the slums of Bombay, living in Bombay, we noticed, beggars still on the streets of Bombay, as they were always before the growth rate had been growing, were not less, they were perhaps more than they had been before. And the stories of the people displaced from the lands that had been taken for steel plants years ago and the Narmada project and stuff, we assured them that they would be rehabilitated in better lives. And they were not. They were not. The misery that progress was causing and the shine that was coming into the lives of a few people in India, the darkness it was causing to others, was visible to people who were, I would say, sensitive to others, sensitive to others, not just celebrating their own success, but sensitive to others. So many such people, diverse people, came together voluntarily to think together about why is this so? Why
Sure.
is it so? And these are
Yeah.
varieties of people. There were poor people, rich people, women farmers, business leaders, retired policymakers, economists, and so on. But talking as human beings and starting all of them with the assumption that I don't know. Whether I was a person, a member, then I was not, I mean, another member of the planning commission at the time, that I'm supposed to know, but I realize I don't know. And everyone admitting that we don't know the answer, so collectively, let's find out. And what we then did was to use this process of systems thinking, which says that any situation is a cause of, is a result of, sorry, many causes together. It's not a linear thing that this one cause resulted in that one thing, which then in turn led to that thing. Many different sorts of
Right.
forces come
Right.
together
Right.
to create the condition in which we find ourselves.
Yeah.
And
And
for systems thinking, basic assistance, first understand why it is like this. And the dictum is that every system is perfectly designed to produce the results it is presently producing. So if there's a result presently which you don't like, or even the one you like, first sit back and reflect on why is it like this. So
right,
how
right,
to
right. Thank
understand
you. And
the
sorry,
complex.
and the four models of power. May I show the slides now?
No, you may not. I see.
Okay, sure, sure, sure.
Thank you, and I'll tell you when to.
Okay, thanks, Arun. Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you so much. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is something, by the way, in about conversations. You know, we get it. We got 1 hour. There has to be a routine, and there's no longer a conversation. It is then an ordered show. It's an ordered show.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yes, we said, okay, we have to listen to many different perspectives, people who see things that we don't see, which is why the necessity to have diverse people, women farmers from Haryana were part of the group. They speak in Hindi. They don't use scientific or even school educated language, but we have to take their point of view because maybe it is the most relevant point of view to understand the condition of the system of India. And yes, of course, there were people who were the leaders of big business corporations, and they understood from a different perspective the condition of India. So listening to each other in languages which all of us could express, and those languages are quite often pictures, they're not scientific and educated words. They can be through plays and acting, just showing what I mean. And we had school children. Who were these? These were street children from Paharganj who live on the streets because they're orphans from Bihar or somewhere. And Salam Balak Trust gathered these children also to be part of the thinking group, equal members of the thinking group. How could the children speak? They enacted in plays for us what it means to live on the street and what hope or hopelessness they had both they have in their lives, so they could express themselves. Taking all this together, we began to understand the forces that are shaping our system. It's a big elephant, and as they say in the story, many blind people, and they're blind because they think they know but they know very little. When you put it together, you begin to understand this big thing in the middle of which we all are a part. And in that, we came to that we are people from business, and you and I and many others, that, you know, when we talk about strategy and planning and we want to get the numbers and we want to make a prediction, and we said, no, this is a complex situation which will evolve by the actions that we ourselves take. So the prediction that we make depends on what we will do. I can't keep myself out of the system and say, I can predict for you that this is what is going to be. Because I have to ask the question, what are you going to do? That is also going to determine the outcome of this system. And if what I am going to do is the same, then I can easily predict for you what the outcome is going to be. But if you want something different, you have to start imagining, if I did different things, how could the forces in the system change and what may be the outcome, and would it be the outcome we want? So in that we came to, we need to understand the process of large scale transformation And within the process of large-scale transformation, we need to understand where power lies, who has power, and there are different forms of power in any system. And if we can understand which powers are not being harnessed enough to create the outcome that we all want, then we've got to give room for that power to grow. And that brings in what you're saying about fireflies. And I'll come back to it again because it is at the essence of it. Now let's talk about power, and let me put up, please, now, power. We're talking about models of transformation and models of power. So here's the first one. These were pictures produced, as I said, because if you want to communicate complex ideas, I can write a book on power, I certainly can. On the economy, I can write several perhaps, but who's going to understand it? Please stay with the picture. Yeah. So in this one, this describes what we saw ourselves as the world in 2000, the world of India in 2000. It was a world in which many people were becoming rich, and we were celebrating the stock market, which was now reported every day in all our papers, and news channels on the TV were dedicated to business and to the stock market. And we were beginning to celebrate more the wealth that people have, and they were showing it off. Page 3 on Times of India in 2000 had a page on the parties these people went to, the Taj Hotel, what clothes they wore, who else was there, the diamond necklace and the car they came in, etc. So peacocks were strutting around, which I hadn't noticed in India when I left in 1989 for my 10 years of learning in the United States. But around, there were these birds scrambling. They were completely scrambling around. And some person put this to us very beautifully. It was a woman teacher. She said, you know, listening to you economists and guys and what you intended to have done by the reforms of 1991, you said if you open up the market, there will be more opportunity for everybody. It's like you're saying, you open up your courtyard and say, I'm going to throw some grains into the courtyard, but there are opportunities for little birds to start eating. But if there is a big peacock in the vicinity, it will land and start eating those grains, right? And the peacock is so big and it frightens the other birds. And maybe some other bigger birds like these bigger pigeons or something, they will try to go around the peacock and get their own opportunities. But the little sparrows, you can't even see them. They're waiting for the trickle down, as it was, of the opportunity to them. This, she said, describes what the process of opening up markets and leaving it to opportunities to people who already have something. If you have wealth, you can use it in a market to create more wealth. If you have knowledge, then you can use the knowledge because there's more opportunity to create more for yourself and for others. Those who already have something can take more advantage of the market, and thus by a process of cumulative causation, if you have something when the system is very open, you can get some more, and so disparities will increase. This is inevitable by systems design. And thus, what we have been noticing now for the last few years and talking about how inequalities have increased in India as well as around the world by this idea that open up the market, open up the system. You theoretically think that you're providing opportunities for everybody, but those who already have something can take advantage of those opportunities, and those who have nothing get further and further behind in this. Where does the power lie? The power lies with those who already have something. And when you're talking about open economy in terms of open to capital, those who have money and capital, they will become not just even more wealthy, they will become more powerful in terms of how they can influence the ideas and the policies in the system. And we've noticed this, that the business people around the world have greater influence on what the economic policies should be. So this was already pointed out that this is the implication naturally. If you follow this model of change, of transforming systems, open it up and let everyone fend for themselves. However, we reflect and said, then what are the alternatives? We were in a situation where we, for years, had a planning process and experts on the top who were supposed to know what was good for everybody, supposed to know how to make the change so that you get the outcomes that we want. And in that method, we wanted sustainable growth, inclusive growth, and faster growth, which was the motto of the planning commissions of India. But we weren't getting the growth of the change that was mattering to the people on the ground. So take the next slide, please.
Yes, sure. Just a moment. Yeah.
So here in a picture again represented, I told you we had little children, also part of it, that here were kids waiting for clean water, hmm, waiting for education. And there were these big buffaloes. Who are buffaloes? They're the big guys. We call them netas. Huh? ऊपर हैं, experts हैं. They're all together in big bodies of committees or commissions and stuff. And they must find a solution and agree with each other that they have the solution and act. And one of these big buffaloes says, I got it from my view, from my discipline, maybe just an economics view or a science view. I say this is the solution and gets up and says, okay. The other buffaloes around say, I am not ready to move yet. And what was this picture that this girl drew, this picture? He said, you know, in India, in the hot season, we find that everyone's looking for cool water somewhere. And the buffaloes also, big guys, they get the water first. Once they get in there, the little children have to wait for them to come out before they can start cooling themselves. So then the second buffalo says, I got an idea and I want to do this. But the first buffalo says, when you did not cooperate with me, why would I cooperate with you? And then the third buffalo, they're all wallowing around. Oh, bacha bahar baita hai, keh raha hai, please guys, make up your mind and do something. I'm waiting for the change to happen, which is going to benefit me. So here is power, which is, first one, it is in those who have wealth, wealth creators, they have the power to change much in the system. Here it is people are given the positions and they have power and can change things. So this is second model of transformation from the top with knowledge and power. And you can see the outcomes of it. The third one, if you just put in there, in this model, there is power which is exercised through force. Those who have greater force, ability to apply physical force and threaten others with it, are leaders. And we call them netas and we call them dadas, and they are leaders too. And their means for exercising power is violence, is threat of violence. And in 2000, and we're still seeing it, as they pointed out, that we had this big Naxal movement all around India, all around India. And there were leaders who the local people followed under respect or fear, and they were exercising power to try and produce transformation in the whole country. And these two pictures, the one you saw before and the one you saw now, the first one that is a peacock strutting while birds are scrambling, and tigers growling and wolves prowling while little animals are scrambling for their own safety, we were seeing simultaneously in India. That one may have been, in fact, inducing the other to happen. The more that people looked after themselves and became wealthy, the more there would be unrest and people saying the only means I have to get something for myself is to become violent. And I want to fast forward to today. Then, I'm talking in 2000 in Delhi, in Bombay particularly, Pune also, it was very safe for people to walk out in the evenings, even women alone perhaps, but certainly older people could take a walk or drive their cars and not expect to be accosted by people with guns who pull them out and rape the woman and steal their things. Today in my city, Gurgaon, it has been happening for 2 years or 3 years. Young people with guns and knives are, taking away things, taking away women, like I'm saying also. It's just, I want it and I want it now and I can do it. So this is the condition that is on. And the third model persists. We're still trying top down with the buffaloes to try and sort out this problem and to make goodness happen. So all three models are applying at the same time. And this is true about all complex systems. Many different forces, many different people with different ideas, different theories about how change is produced meet together. So India has all these three in great richness, continues to have had them. You've got people who believe that top-down authority with force, some sort of emergency is going to make things all right. Others who say, leave it to the wealth creators, lower the taxes on them, give them freedom to do business, and somehow the world will become all right for everybody. And yes, we do continue to insist that the experts up there will find the right solution for everybody. It's not working. It's not working anywhere in the world. Fortunately, I'm saying in 2000, because we were listening to very small people, we were asking them, how is change actually you see produced around you? And we noticed that there were these fireflies. And these fireflies were not people like us who had decided to do it that way. This was natural to them that since we don't have the power, this is the only way to do it. These were, let's put the fourth one up. So we noticed around the country, there were jugnus, they were people who naturally, because they were otherwise powerless, were finding the power in themselves. In a jugnu, in a firefly, the energy, the power is within themselves. You don't give it to them and light them up as leaders. And this is why when many people say leadership development programs, I say you're starting at the wrong end. It has to start with, first, I want to do something, and being very realistic about how small I may be in certain matters compared to the system around me. So where is my power? And that power I shall use as much as I can. So all little fireflies, all of them rising together, all over the country, can turn darkness into light. And this again, this young girl who helped us to produce these pictures said, in dark India, yes, we talked about the buffaloes roaming in the daytime. At night, hamare UP mein, when it's very hot and dark, you go out and sometimes there's magic. All these fireflies come out of the bushes, and you know that life is made beautiful by many small people rising up, not because they want to outshine anyone else, but it's just their joy in life, and they're doing it in a harmless way, and there's light in them, and there's light for others also. So this model of change, ground up, bottom up, where even the smallest people are the energy for change, is Gandhiji's model. He kept saying, change will come from our villages. Change will come from the poor people. But we followed the top-down Nehru expert model and said, no, we need scale, we need big things, and there'll be a spill-off. The spill-off are not just the good things, the spill-off of many bad things that have come out of those big things and that have caused the harm to the environment and caused the inequities in our societies that we are now representing as the strategic development goals and saying we have to find another way to change the world than the one we have been following for the last 100 years or more, 100 years. And that last way is mentioned in the 17th SDG, which says it's partnerships. It's not leadership. So usually we say, unless we get the leaders, we won't have the change. I'm so glad it says partnerships. Now let's unpack. What do you mean by partnerships and partnerships between whom? So this is the fourth model to this. And so these are the models, and that's why this is on the cover of the book, which you mentioned, A Billion Fireflies. And it says about critical conversations. Partnerships are created, genuine, deep collaborations are created when people understand each other and agree that they have little of something and you have little of something and someone else has little of something. The little that we have, if we were to put it together, and it's not about me, it's not about my brand and some. So therefore, Arun, I could just jump ahead and therefore, but many of the examples of things that we call fireflies today, to me are not real fireflies. They're people who are creating an idea and want it branded and want to tell others, use this, and then you can have a scaled up result.
No, that's not.
Sorry, that's the same old idea. It's the same old idea. It's me, it's my brand, it's my scale thing.
Yeah,
That's
not it. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for this beautiful exposition of the four models. And, luckily, there are beautiful examples of change in the Firefly model in India. I mean, I'm reminded of the Kudumbashri model of neighborhood circles in Kerala, where thousands and thousands of women in small neighborhood circles have created such a thriving economy, such thriving, amazing things, not out of top-down approach, not out of scaling up something, but out of fireflies working in neighborhood circles. So question I have for you, Arun, now is what is the role of critical conversation in this? And, after we listen to you, then we'll throw it open for conversations with the audience. So could you tell us a bit on that, please?
Yes, thank you. The problem of the world and the problem of India too is that we have divided ourselves into people like us and people not like us. And there are many dimension in which we are like them or not like them. Economic status is one, the scientific discipline that I'm in is another.
Yes.
Economists believe that others don't understand economics. Scientists believe no one else understands science. And within even all our social sciences, there's so many sub-disciplines, and social scientists say the economists get it wrong, and they don't talk to each other. They write for each other, they celebrate each other inside their own circles. So the world is
Yes.
divided into narrower and narrower communities of people like themselves. And as Rabindranath Tagore, the Gurudev said, he feared that the world could be broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. And that is what India is becoming. And the world is becoming, India is becoming. It should be one domestic home, but we're breaking it up into fragments by walls that we're setting up against each other. And of course, social media and the new technologies have contributed immensely to this. Because
So
the algorithms are making us only listen to the people that we like, because they want to be able to sell to us something. And so they're keeping on. This is good marketing, it's good segmentation, and then you sell each segment
yeah.
of the market an appropriate product for itself. But that's having a big effect on the quality of society itself. It may be good for marketing, it's having a terrible effect on society. That we are in social media, in communities, of people who think that they got it right and the others are wrong. And they don't listen to each other across the world. And of course, social media makes it very difficult to listen to anybody at all. It's good for tweeting and speaking, but where's the encouragement? Actually, don't stop tweeting and just listen. And
Yes.
in whatever characters it is, you're not able to actually go beneath the words a person is saying. In
Sure.
real listening, you got to listen to the being of somebody. And therefore, I say when you have to listen, it's not just what the person is saying. It is start inquiring into why does the person believe this? I mean, he's a
Yes.
good, or she's a good human being just like you are. There's
Yes.
something in the logic of that person, in the faith of that person that makes the person believe this. So if you want to understand another human being, please listen to their reasoning. And going one level deeper than that, of why they believe this, you begin to unravel their stories of their lives. You begin to know who they are. And that is where
Right.
we found ourselves in our lives and they in their lives. And across
Right.
together, we can shape something. So what is the missing trick here?
Yes.
And I want to say this, look, India has given the world yoga. What is yoga? It says breathe well. And if you breathe well, which is something so simple, every baby connects with the world when it's born through the first breath. And we forget how to breathe well. It's something that our bodies were designed to do was to breathe well. We forget. And so late in life, you're teaching people just breathe well. And if you breathe well, your heart will function better, your kidneys will function better, your mind will be better. Just breathe well. Oh, and people are making millions selling the idea of breathing well, and you're saying India giving the idea to the world, have an international yoga day. By the way, the second thing a baby does in terms of senses, two or three, another one is it listens and recognizes its mother's voice. It listens to sounds. Eyesight comes a little later, perhaps.
Right. Right. Right.
We don't know which order, but it's so important. Now, we are
Yes.
in schools and colleges taught to speak well.
Yes.
Well.
Yes.
We award the best debaters. Are we awarding the best listener who is not listening to the other debater side to say, I'm going to catch this person and trip him when I speak now? See how clever I am, like Shashi Tharoor, I can trip you no matter what you say.
Right.
That is not listening. That is
Correct. Correct.
speaking. So we need to encourage within ourselves, in our communities, in our schools, listening as a simple
Yes.
discipline. And I think India needs it most of all. If we were to, in our own communities, say, I want to today find somebody who I feel is not like me or I strongly disagree with, and just listen in a nice, inquiring way through, it's a very simple technique, but
Sure.
enabling the person to speak and do more speaking rather than my saying, I think I know what your ideas and let me explain it. That's not listening.
Yes.
Hmm?
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we're just going to move slowly towards taking some questions from the audience. We just have about 15 minutes left. But I think one of the concerns which some people have said is where can one participate? Where can we really connect with all of this? So I would just like to point you to the website of www.onewholesomeworld.com, requesting Sean to put it in the chat box. And from there, we will connect you to a program. Of course, many of you have signed up already. There's a program called iCatalyst, which is really trained at developing the process of being a catalyst, a Jugnu, as Arun has described. And secondly is the Foundation for Peace and Compassionate Leadership. You can visit that, but we'll reach out to you through programs for schools, projects for localization of work in the area of agriculture, in the area of youth development, and so on. So we'll come back to you. So let's take some questions now. And Sean has put the links in the website. So could you also put Foundation for Peace and Compassionate Leadership? Okay, so let's have a few questions now from the audience. I'm going to invite Sean to take some from Facebook, and then after that, I'll take one from here. Let me start by Rohit Chandana is saying, do you believe the people at bottom of the pyramid have more respect and trust vis-a-vis people in cities? He's saying, do they have, the people at the bottom of the pyramid in villages, have more respect and sense of community than, say, people living in cities? Arun, what's your view on that?
Rohit, I'm so happy you're here. Rohit and I go back a long way. He is, for me, the spirit of Fireflies. Right? He's like many people in businesses. He's very, very good. But I also noticed what you said in the chat box, Rohit. You said, is listening at a philosophical level also a function of self-belief and self-confidence? All human beings want to feel confident, want to believe that there's some goodness in them. What we do in the top-down models of change is we take away their confidence in themselves, saying, we know what it is for you. In the four models of power that I showed you, you would have noticed the three of them, wealth, and the wealthy people must know what is good because look, they got wealthy by what they know and how they do. And all people at the top, we give them positions, political positions or positions of authority because of their knowledge. Oh, like I said, people acquire the power by Danda Se and all that. And all of them expect that the people at the bottom must follow what they say because, we are after all the leaders and we must follow. We take away people's self-confidence and belief from them. So in this model, in the Fireflies model, I start always by asking everybody, what do you care about most in life? And the caring that they have would be of something small, may seem to us a few things around themselves. And then ask the second question, what do you think is required to make a change in it? And then, because we have deprived them of the way of thinking naturally and looking at systems, they will tell us, oh, what is required is, more money is required to do it. Oh, this is required. They promptly are adopting the now model of the things that are missing, which, by the way, we want them to feel that way. Otherwise, they won't respect us and for our solutions. And I said, no, look around to what is happening. What would you think would be stupid ways, perhaps small ways, in which this change could be brought about? And they mention those and they look hesitatingly to say, I'm probably sounding foolish and stupid to you, but I'm saying something so small when the problem is so big. I said, no, that's something we can do. Okay. I'll go there next. And then see whose support you might need to make this happen. And they look around and say, around me, many people in the village feel the same way. They have the same
absolutely.
Collaboration. A coalition of fireflies arising, and they can make it bottom up.
Beautiful. Thanks, Arun. And just building on what you're saying, Arun, I just wanted to share that in one of the earlier episodes of Conscious Conversation, we talked about open space technology, where people listen to what do I deeply care about, they put that out. Others who also care about the same thing cluster together with them, like the imaginal cells. Sean has sent you that book, Butterflies. The imaginal cells come together, they look around for opportunities, and they start taking action. And the energy of such conversations, I think many of you have attended these sessions, is enormous, humongous. I just wanted to invite Ganesh to say a few words. Incidentally, you can also have fireflies in organizations. It's not only villages, not only societies. I mean, we work as consultants saying that in a big organization with 5 lakh people, can you find the Jugnus and fireflies? Can they start catalyzing bringing appreciatively what is together and having the conversations. Ganesh, would you like to share a bit? I mean, we've done it with you at one time. What was your experience like? Would love you to share a bit about that briefly before we take some more questions.
No, thank you, Arun. In fact, I'm delighted. I just posted that. I'm so delighted that two Aruns with a common love for fireflies are both on this channel. Arun Bakru, of course, helped us with the whole Jugnu thinking when I was running Zensar. And Arun Maira, I think some of you may not know that he was kind of the advisor to social venture partners, and I think very instrumental in thinking through growth strategies, keeping us firmly rooted to the ground. So it's amazing. And of course, I'm very familiar with Arun's Fireflies Rising work. And Arun, I just want to, I mean, I actually posted this. I'm a little shattered at this point of time, which most of us are, because there are so many echo chambers and there is so much of divisiveness in society. And I think we all know that for fireflies to rise, I mean, all the fireflies might have some bond of unison that, you know, that makes them feel included. But in this world where equity is at a premium and everybody is trying to find something to hate about the other, what do you think will be the breakthrough that will make fireflies truly rise and lift us out of our despondency?
You know, Ganesh, during the pandemic, there have been many people who've been able to have conversations about what's going wrong in the world and also what matters to them. So there have been these opportunities to get into the conversations together. And I've been noticing the patterns of these conversations, right? So it's not that there aren't, and they've been. I mean, Gautam Buddha encouraged people to be by themselves. We've had in our tradition, you know, be a good being. Be a good being. And a good being is one who recognizes that she or he is part of something much larger. You're a small speck in a big, large system. Don't have this feeling that you are smart enough to understand this whole complex system and then do something about it. You'll make a mess of it. So the humility is the first thing. So many of the things which Arun Vaklu does extremely well is this consciousness of your small place and be comfortable with your small place in the world.
Yeah. Thanks.
Comfortable with it. However, so I'd say that in systems thinking, there are three domains: the systems being, the systems thinking, and the systems acting. Now, let me walk you through. There's a lot of opportunities and programs to help you in your systems being. All are spiritual programs. There, you can go to Vipassana for 7, 8, 10 days, and it's all over. And from India, it's catching on in the world. But that doesn't change the world. Okay? And so we need action, and it has to be systems action also. System action, we are saying, is collaborative action. There will be many different energies, many different powers, many different resources, different sorts have to work together. What's coming in the collaboration between systems actors is what I call the middle one, is systems thinking. We are taught in science and in management and in bureaucracy and government to break things into parts. And if you fix the parts, perhaps the whole machine will be all right. But it's not a machine. Neither is society nor nature a machine. It's the relationships between different things of different sorts which create the conditions of this organic system. It's not a machine. In a machine also, the relationships between parts. And Ganesh, I know you've done systems dynamics at MIT perhaps, but that was the engineer's way of thinking of a system. It's the parts and there's some things you can design in terms of connections. In an organic system, each part evolves in relation to other parts. They all influence each other, and it's the system evolves because of interactions, lively interactions, which is why it's hard to predict also what shape an organic system will take precisely at any precise time in the future. Now, engineers don't like this. They want prediction, they want control. And the humility comes again that my way of thinking must change completely. I must learn to be part of an organic system and understand it's an organic system in which there are other places of energy. Now, even nature is reacting to us and showing, I also got power. You think you could overpower me? I'll show you my power. And the virus, of course, is the extreme example of it too. So understanding these forces and not saying I'm going to control them, but how could I cooperate with them, let me say.
Beautiful.
Or start with cooperation with some, push against some others that we don't like. So in those conversations, you've got to go beyond just saying, we are all compassionate, we love, together we can now, join hands and do. We need a theory of action, and that theory of action must be recognizing that there are different sorts of power, there are different sorts of resources, there are different sorts of views in people. So Mahatma Gandhi is, for me, a great example of a firefly. He is the most beautiful firefly. But Mahatma Gandhi was one who delved into the religious traditions of the whole world. He read the Jewish books and the Christian books and even the Quran and Gita and everything. So let no one tell Mahatma Gandhi anything about systems being. He knew it. But he was
Yeah.
searching for a theory of action. And in that theory of action, he understood science and he respected it, he read it, like the Dalai Lama does, very, very well. The difference between Dalai Lama and Mahatma Gandhi is that Dalai Lama understands systems thinking as well as Mahatma Gandhi did. That many things combined together, different perspectives, different languages, and that shapes the system. And Mahatma Gandhi, how was leader of a movement? He was rallying people to go. So we need a theory of action which people form themselves into larger movements towards that common cause. We don't have in the world today an appropriate theory of action which is associated with good systems thinking and fireflies arising together. Our theories of action are all, and you know this so well, because you in SVP and others have talked to big philanthropists. They have a good heart. They have a resource and a very necessary resource. But the theory of action they bring in is about scale, it's about precision, it's about the best practice from here to there and bring it down. And there you are, once again, I'm saying, we're disempowering the fireflies completely.
Correct, correct. And just building on what, see, earlier Arun said something very interesting. He said that when we come in from a space of ego, when we come in from a space of I have to do this and I have to do that, I think over the years I've seen, Ganesh, that that comes in the way of the whole system working. It's only when I have the humility and the openness of heart and I have systems thinking and systems being, but coming from a space of silent, peaceful emptiness, and that to me is an extremely important ingredient in this soup. Now, I just want to thank the people who have written questions. Sarah has written questions. Ajay Sarah says, what are the challenges that you see in the bottom-up approach when the current power systems perceive themselves as challenged? Isn't there a danger of these models being threatened? So, Arun, briefly, would you like to respond to Sarah's question?
This is the central point, Sarah, and thank you. You hit probably the nail in the head. You put your finger right onto it. It's all about power. And in nature, in societies, those who have power like to maintain their power. It's natural. Yeah? It's natural. And those who don't have the power don't know how to influence the change, the course of the system. So we have either the change through revolution, when the people who don't have the power are so fed up with being imposed upon with the wrong ideas and being put down by the people in power. Revolution is one way to change the system. But we don't want that. We want Gandhiji's non-violent way of changing the power relations in the system. And what means changing the power relations, the balance has to be restored again. Power coming to the people, our constitution, and I have it here, I have it in my room. What does the constitution say at the very beginning? We, the people of India, we, the people of India, having solemnly sworn, resolved to constitute India, we the people. So this thing solemnly resolved to constitute India. Now, I'm in many such conversations, especially during the pandemic. They promptly want to write another constitution. That's once again using our method. If I write it down and people are going to do it, it doesn't happen like that. Our policies also don't work just because we've written a policy. It's in my being, in my action, and every day with the same set of people, or we enlarge in other sets of people. We, from this point which Arun, we've been talking about, is we have a common hope, a common idea about what is good. And then we are going to discover together, and our egos will contend against each other. Our egos will. We can't be egoless. Our egos will contend each other. But I must be aware when my ego is overpowering me. Yeah? Who is me? I'm not my ego. And the me is that hope and my mind. And let my ego not clutter up the way I'm listening to someone else and say, he's contradicting me. And I've got to prove this person that I'm actually smarter than he or she is. So in this change, this is coming to I'm saying right now that there's a whole set of people, as always is, who presently are dominating the world with the power that they have and the ideas that they have. And our world is constituted by ideas, the ideas of economics, the ideas of economic systems, yeah, etc. And the ideas of how change is brought about, these are the present dominant ideas, and we have to change these ideas. So people who don't have the power are still going to have to be overcoming people who have the power of ideas on their side.
Absolutely.
Ideas. And so please learn how to form stronger power ties. And unless everyone remains, as Arun, you said, true to himself and the cause, you will form very poor movements, and movements of change collapse. All democratic movements of change, like after the Arab Spring and so on, the quarrels between the people themselves, thereafter, you create the same mess and the same sort of authorities afterwards.
Right,
So
right,
going to
right.
be the leader after we get rid of the present set of leaders.
Wonderful, wonderful. So thank you, Arun. And also before we conclude, just a big thank you to all those who have put things into the chat box. I'm fully conscious that we haven't responded to everything. However, we will store what's in the chat box. And Mr. Arun Maira, myself, Sean will look at it and respond to you. And we'll also give you some websites where you can learn about some of the good things happening, like Nexus of Good, the Better India, the beautiful lists of Jugnu things happening in India, which we'll share with you about. So with that, I would like to thank all of you. Thank you, Arun, for this wonderful sharing. I love the conversation that you had. Thank you, Ganesh. Thank you, everyone who shared. And looking forward to more conversation. Remember, this is a movement. And believe me, it will move forward with your blessings. And thank you for showing up. Thank you for joining, and all good wishes. Thank you, Arun. Pleasure having you with us. Very grateful for your time. Thank you to all who joined, and have a lovely evening. Stay safe, stay happy, and stay in touch with the heart, the light within. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye. Take care. Thanks. Thanks. All the best. Bye. Take care. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you very
We'll put all
much.
the websites. We'll put all the websites for everyone.
Thanks, Arun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arun.
Welcome. Bye. Thanks.
Thanks, Arun ji.
Thank you, Ji. Rajendra ji. Thanks, Sarah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ravi. Thanks, Suresh.
Thank
All the
you.
best. Sanjay, Ashok. Thanks a lot. Bye. Bye-bye.